Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Operation DarkStar, Chapter 11 to Chapter 12, by Mark Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 11. The door slammed hard behind him. Jared's wife sat up with a start, her eyes barely open as her husband handed their daughter across. "You scared me," Paula growled angrily, her eyes suddenly growing large at the sight of the gleaming axe in her husband's hand. "Shh," Jared hissed. Normally not one for being the quiet wife, Paula nodded silently. She was bearing witness to an expression on her husband's face, and she was frightened to her core. A woman's scream filled the night air, ignoring his wife and daughter. The ex-firefighter moved quickly toward the window and peered out into the yard, and his heart sank. Movement everywhere. Even in the blackness of the night, he could see their misshapen bodies. They were tearing their way through the neighborhood, his knuckles hard and white on the hickory handle. The sound of smashing glass downstairs shook him from his thoughts of worry, and even though it had been 10 years since he had run into a burning building, primal instincts of action and adrenaline kicked in. Treating the creatures as if they were a fire, he attempted to plan the best course of action to get his family to safety. "Grab Taylor," he ordered. "What is it? You need to tell me what's going on," Paula asked. "If we don't get out of here in about 20 seconds, we're all going to die," Jared said, as he pushed them towards the walk-in robe. Years of experience in his former life, he had ensured that every door was outfitted in solid hardwood, a fact he was now grateful for. Flipping the brass lock into position, he knelt before his wife and daughter. "We don't have much time. All I can tell you is that something is on the way to do us harm. I need to get you two to safety," Jared insisted. "I don't understand. You have to slow down. You're scaring Taylor," Paula replied. Her husband thrust a handful of clothes into her hands, jeans, leather jacket, and boots. "Get dressed quick," Jared urged. He was also donning heavy hiking clothes. "What about me?" Taylor pleaded, clearly afraid, but also caught up in all the excitement. Jared knelt beside her, their faces inches apart, his eyes gauging hers. Jared talked low and steady. He attempted to drown out the screams outside, the inhabitants in the streets losing the fight against the demon hordes. "We're not going to be able to get your clothes. You've been so brave, but I think Tony is still scared. Can you help him?" Jared said, pointing to the stuffed tiger toy in his daughter's arms. "I'll do my best, Daddy," Taylor replied. The ex-firefighter tousled her hair, then hugged her hard. Downstairs, they could hear the sounds of their house being destroyed by monsters. Growls, roars, screaming. Then the most terrifying sound of all. Footsteps on the stairs. "It's time," Jared announced. Using the head of his axe, he pushed away a section of the ceiling. Something large came barreling into the bedroom. From behind the robe door, it sounded like a snorting bull, followed by the smashing of furniture. Jared knew their time had run out. As quickly and quietly as he could manage, he first lifted his wife, then his daughter into the robe's exposed ceiling. "Start crawling north. I'll be right behind you," Jared instructed. The door into the robe thumped. The ex-firefighter looked around desperately. Another thump at the door, this one harder. Whatever was on the other side had now sensed that there was something inside, and Jared knew instinctively that he was hungry. Another thump, much harder, the timber cracked under the pressure, and an idea sprung to mind. Grabbing the steel pipe the clothes hangers were attached to, Jared ripped it violently from the robe, then wedged it between the timber door and the wall behind. That should hold you, fucker, Jared muttered. The banging on the door was coming quicker and with more ferocity. Scooping up his axe, he hefted himself into the ceiling crawl space and into the darkness beyond. It took him several seconds before his eyes adjusted to the darkness of the crawl space. At first, he couldn't see anything. He started to panic, then heard the faint sounds of his wife and daughter crawling onward, followed by Paula's voice as she whispered to Taylor. The area inside the ceiling would have been tight for any adult, but for Jared's huge frame, it made any movement slow and cumbersome. Keeping his hands close to his chest, the ex-firefighter used his elbows and toes to inch forward. Having been crawling for nearly 2 minutes in the pitch black, Paula came to sudden stop. "What is it, Mommy?" Taylor asked. Paula attempted to look around their cramped confines. Nothing. She then used her fingers and ever so carefully felt for anything that might lead to a way out. "Mommy?" Taylor insisted. Paula ignored the girl as she continued to search for a way out. "Mommy," Taylor whined. "Sweetheart, I'm a little busy right now," Paula replied, her actions becoming more frantic. "Mommy." "I think I found a handle," Taylor said. This stopped her mother immediately. "Say that again?" Paula asked. "A handle like the one on Daddy's toolbox," Taylor said slowly. Paula wiggled back down towards her daughter. "Show me," she urged. "Show you what?" A gruff voice broke the silence of the crawl space. "I was beginning to think you were never coming," Paula replied in a shaky voice. "I don't know if you're aware, but this ceiling wasn't exactly designed for someone of my ample size," Jared said, attempting to create levity to their dire circumstances. "Let alone your giant head," Paula replied. Within seconds, they found the handle that Taylor had located. Due to unuse, it took Jared a few seconds to twist and open the small rectangular door. Jared was the first to push himself through, then Taylor, and finally Paula. The door led into a vertical shaft, a steel ladder bolted to the wall. At the top, a padlocked manhole. "It's locked," Paula said, not even bothering to hide her disappointment. "It's a combination lock, and I know the PIN number. Taylor's birthday, day and month," Jared replied. This seemed to alleviate her tension, but only slightly. On the other side of that manhole is a subsection of the roof, which I had specially made. It leads to an emergency stairwell designed as a failsafe, Jared added. "That's all well and good, but this is the first time I'm hearing it. What if you hadn't been around? Taylor and I would have been up Schitt's Creek," Paula grumbled. "I was the one who had it put in, and I'm the one who would never leave or desert you. So let's not focus on the negative." With Jared doing the heavy lifting, and his axe never leaving his hand, they were all able to exit through the manhole. Cold rain greeted them up on the roof. Jared wasn't sure if this was a blessing or a curse. All he knew was that it might make it hard for whatever those creatures were to see or hear them. They stood upon a small platform constructed between two sections of the roof, which was shielding them from the brunt of the rain. Jared stared up at the sky. No moon or stars, which wasn't unusual under the circumstances, but there was something else. It appeared darker, sinister. He supposed everything would seem as such. "We can't stay out here for long," Paula said, indicating their pale daughter. She was anxious and tired. Jared peered over the edge of the roof, below another steel ladder fixed to the wall leading down. Beyond that, the ground was empty of beasts. "We'll climb down, then head out to the garage." "I left my work phone in the Dodge," Jared said. "Where will we go then?" Paula insisted. "The police safety for you and Taylor is my prime concern," Jared said. Something large whooshed past his head, and landed on the roof just past him and his family. The size of a small car, winged and more legs than Jared could count in the dark. It crept down towards them. Hundreds of eyes stared back dispassionately. A giant pair of fangs twitched in anticipation. Jared moved himself between the monstrosity and his family. "Go, I'll hold it off," Jared ordered, his axe held at the ready. "No, it'll kill you," Paula said. "I'll be right behind you. Now go," Jared said abruptly. Paula was torn, but she knew that to stay might very well mean the death of her daughter. With her daughter at her side, Paula made her way down. Jared faced off against the giant winged spider-like nightmare that was moving slowly towards him. The ex-firefighter getting down in a combative stance, his knuckles tightening on the wooden handle of the axe. It felt good, powerful. He had forgotten the intense feeling of being in a life-and-death situation. It was intoxicating. "Come and meet death!" Jared roared, the gleaming axe head moving back and forward in his practiced hands. The creature before him had no concept of human language, but its base instincts recognized a threat. Its reaction was immediate. It leapt on the lower landing and scuttled forward, its fangs rearing up, exposing the lethal spike like ends. Hissing, it advanced, sensing an easy kill. Jared was used to working with heights and confined spaces and battling the unpredictable element of fire. He easily sidestepped the spider creature's opening attack and swung his axe in a horizontal stroke, severing one of the two fangs and causing the beast to retreat slightly. Jared stared down at the foot-long appendage. Black blood pulsed out of the fang and onto the roof, mixing with the rain. Clinging tight to her mother's side, Taylor tried with all her might not to look down. The young girl didn't understand what was going on tonight, but what had her scared wasn't the monsters now chasing them, but her father's reaction to the events they were now caught in. She had always thought that there was nothing he couldn't face down, but she saw the fear in his eyes, and that in turn frightened her more than anything in the world. Sensing this, Paula stopped their descent and squeezed her daughter comfortingly with one arm, the other gripping the ladder with white knuckles. "Don't be scared. Daddy will protect us," Paula said with fierce determination, casting a glance towards the roof and feeling an icy pull on her heart. The beast and Jared circled each other, both sizing the other up, the spider creature now unsure of the smaller human. Adrenaline coursing through the ex-firefighter's body, and as much as his concern went out to his family, primal instincts were now taking over. Feelings of survival and murder clouding his brain. "Didn't like that, I'm betting?" "One fang down. One to go," Jared growled. This time it was the big man who advanced, under the watchful stare of 1,000 eyes. "Hold on tight," Paula urged as she continued back down the ladder. The wind and rain had increased its intensity. It was taking all her effort to maintain both her daughter and her grip on the emergency ladder. Taylor's eyes opened slightly, despite her best efforts, and what followed was a scream from her nightmares. At some point during their climb, creatures from out of the darkness had begun to amass beneath them, and without even looking, Paula's heart sank. "Taylor!" Jared yelled, turning his attention towards the section of roof where his wife and daughter had departed. He broke his focus towards his adversary. In that split second, the ex-firefighter's attention was diverted. The giant winged spider raced towards Jared and struck him from the side. A mixture of the momentum, size, and the now slippery surface of the roof, Jared went down hard, his axe falling from his grip and sliding across the roof's edge and into the darkness below. "No!" Jared screamed, his only weapon gone. He wrestled the beast who was now atop him. The ladder was shaking violently, as the creatures on the ground fought to be the first to climb towards their prey. Paula was also acutely aware of the commotion coming from the roof of their house. Something long whistled past them, and out of the corner of her eye, she saw it was the parting gift her husband had received from his brothers at arms, the chrome-headed axe that Jared had brought with them. The realization in that one moment that her husband was now defenseless struck her like an icy dagger. Taylor continued to scream as the hordes approached them from below. The extra weight on the ladder appeared to be more than it could bear. Above them, iron groaned under the strain. She decided on uncertainty rather than the demons below. Slowly, she started to lead her daughter back to the roof. Quarter-inch bolts that held the left side rail in place snapped under the violent strain of an overburdened ladder, which lurched suddenly to its right. Both mother and daughter screamed in terror. In minutes, visions of hope and safety had been dashed. The creatures from hell continued their climb. Dozens of gleaming red eyes stared up at them hungrily. "Mommy!" Taylor continued to wail. Heavy tears began to fall as she realized that their time had run out. "Shh, it's going to be all right," Paula said, choking back a sob, and thought, "I hope it's quick." The last bolt holding them upright snapped, and the ladder collapsed to the ground. It felt like slow motion to Paula, who released her grip on the ladder and hugged her daughter tight with both hands. The house shook from the collapsing ladder. Jared felt it but could do nothing as he continued to fight the spider-like creature, barely evading the beast's one venom-filled fang. Jared struck out at the spider's face. Hitting black, soulless eyes, it hissed its discontent. The ex-firefighter knew he couldn't keep going much longer. Already his strength was beginning to fail. Jared looked around, knowing that his axe was gone, desperate for anything that might help his situation. Eyes blurry with fatigue and rain, he spied something long and black. Then he remembered the spider's severed fang. Using one arm as a shield, he reached out in desperation, fingertips grazing the black hairy fang. Jared roared. Arching his back and pushing off with his toes, he stretched until he could wrap his fingers around it, inches from the deadly tip. "Burn in hell!" Jared growled, and using the last vestiges of strength left in him, he thrust the tip of the fang into the center of the creature's face, burying it deep into the skull. The face of the beast was split like an overripe melon from the impact. Black blood and yellow pus poured out from the gaping wound and down Jared's arm and face. The creature let out a pitiful squeal as it slumped forward dead, its dead weight pinning Jared beneath. Fatigue and pressure too great. The ex-firefighter passed out. Chapter 12. 1 second, he was there, the next gone. Something big had struck zero. Sarah's first thought was a car. Still in shock by the suddenness of her partner's assault, the ex-Marine, who was no stranger to stress or danger, shook away her unease. Grasping her medical bag and gritting her teeth, she stepped out into the night rain, prepared for the unknown. Or so she thought. The sight that greeted her was worse than anything she had ever witnessed in Afghanistan. It was like 3 really horrible events had been superimposed over each other. National disaster, combat zone, and Lovecraftian nightmare. Giant fractures had ripped apart the ground, as if a massive earthquake had just occurred. There were people littered everywhere, lying bleeding, mutilated, and screaming for help. But it wasn't the carnage that gave Sarah pause. It was the monsters running chaotically around the area. Creatures of all size and descriptions attacking the helpless people and feeding on their victims' flesh. Within the pandemonium, Sarah spied a police vehicle, its sirens flashing. Her feet found purpose, well before her mind did. Careful not to slip on the wet road, Sarah managed to get to the passenger side of the car without confrontation. Throwing back the car door, she had intended on demanding answers from the officer within. Instead, she was shocked to discover the remains of an officer within. It was only a torso and the top of the officer's head ripped messily away. Blood and gore coated the inside of the vehicle. A bestial roar shook the woman from her stupor. Crucial seconds passed as she made a decision. Dropping her medical bag to the ground, Sarah leant in and grabbed the tactical shotgun from its housing next to the mutilated officer and racked the slide. Stripping the body of anything she could find, Sarah pulled it from its seat and jumped in. The ex-Marine ignored the wet blood from the car seat as it soaked into her clothes, and unlike the movies, the car started on the first try. Sarah slipped the police car into drive. Then pushing the pedal to the floor, the car fishtailed from the sudden burst of speed. Years of tactical driving caused her reflexes to kick in. She steered the car past a long, dark creature that could only be described as a giant snake, except for the multiple heads growing from its trunk, all of which had more of a human appearance than reptile. The car lurched and was thrown roughly to one side as it struck a heavy depression in the ground. With debris littering what was left of the street and rapidly forming mud from the torrential rain, Sarah kept her foot on the accelerator, knowing that to stop would probably cause the car to become bogged. She kept the engine of the police vehicle roaring. She sped past a family trapped in their car, screaming in terror as a dozen human-shaped demons beat their way into the vehicle, pulling the howling occupants out one at a time and disemboweling them alive. Sarah tried to keep her eyes only on what lay ahead, but the fleeting image of the family dying at the hands of the dark-skinned demons. "There was nothing you could have done anyway," Sarah muttered to herself, although she had her doubts. The ex-Marine reminded herself to stay focused because she had a destination, and if this thing was as big as she suspected, her mother needed her tonight. 3 blocks away from where Zero had been killed, and the streets around her were still filled with anarchy. Creatures and monsters attacking people on the streets. The hell spawn fighting their way into homes with the intent on destruction. Fires had broken out. People running scared, screaming and pandemonium. The ex-Marine slammed on the brakes, the police car coming to a skidding halt. The road ahead blocked by a 3-car pileup, 2 of which were burning brightly. Either side the streets were closed. Behind them, beasts were everywhere. Something slapped the window on the passenger side, causing Sarah to jump in her seat. Through bloody handprints, a pudgy man in his late 30s and ruddy complexion stared back. Claw marks and bruises covered the skin on his face, and when he begged for help, Sarah could see missing teeth through a blood-filled mouth. This wasn't something she could simply drive past and ignore. The ex-Marine activated the window. "Please, you have to help me." "My family?" The man's voice trailed off. Sarah realized in the dark her uniform looked similar to a police officer's, as well as the fact that she was driving one of their cars. The man had made an honest assumption. Sarah attempted to look past the man. "Where are they?" she asked. "If you would just come with me," the man muttered, his eyes darting over her shoulder. Something was wrong, she thought too late as the driver's side door was wrenched open and a firm pair of hands grabbed her by the throat and shoulder. A heavy-set man, black goatee and red hunter's jacket, leant in and proceeded to choke her. It all happened so quickly, his actions quick and brutal. The ex-Marine was vaguely aware that the first man she had made contact with was also attempting to enter her car. Luckily, she had only lowered the window partially, and a safety feature of the vehicle meant that the driver's side door was still locked. She attempted to hit the man who was now choking the life from her, the tight confines meaning that her punches lacked sufficient impact. "Frank," "Frank, I can't get in." The first man insisted. "Give me a second." The second man grunted. He now had both hands around Sarah's throat, his eyes black and merciless. She could feel her vision begin to blur. She was trying to kick and punch, but her strength was deserting her. "Shh," the second man urged. Anger filled her brain. Everything she had accomplished in her life. College, the Marines, being a medic, serving her country, becoming a paramedic, monsters from hell, and it was now all going to end by some dipshit with a black goatee. No, she thought. No, it will not. With her vision nearly gone, she felt for the keys in the ignition, and with more luck than she currently deserved, Sarah was able to wrestle them free, and with the large key nestled between her knuckles, she punched the second man with all her might. The key finding the delicate skin around the bony eye socket and into the jelly-like flesh of the eyeball, puncturing it on impact. The man screamed and immediately released his hold on her throat, his hands cupping the damaged eye, the car key still embedded in. The paramedic felt instant relief as she gasped for sweet air. The first man, having witnessed the attack on his partner, used his elbow to smash the passenger's side window in an attempt to crawl in. Fumbling at her hip, Sarah started to free the pistol she had not long earlier liberated from the owner of this car. "Frank, she has a gun!" the first man yelled. He was halfway through the window, his bulk and the jagged edges of the broken window slowing him down. Ignoring the pain in her throat, Sarah scrambled for the pistol on her hip, just as the first man inched his way through the window, his expression grim and determined. "You little bitch!" he snarled, just as Sarah pulled the pistol loose and unleashed 2 rounds into his face, the third entering his left eye and blowing the top of his head. Skull and brain matter exploding over the ceiling and car seat, the body collapsing with a thud. Wasting no time, she then turned her weapon towards the second man, just outside her door, and fired 5 times into his chest. He dropped to his knees at her open door, a look of stunned bewilderment on his face, right before he fell on his back dead. Her breathing was coming in ragged gasps, the entire situation threatening to overload her very being. She wasn't sure how long she sat there, but at some stage an instinctual safety mechanism went off in her head and said that she needed to get out of there right now. However, she needed to do one thing first. Getting out of the car, she raced around to the passenger's side door, and with shaky hands, she grasped the legs of the first man and pulled with all her might. He was heavy-set and caught on the jagged, broken glass of the window. It took her several attempts to finally wrench him free, ignoring the sickening sound as the flesh from his face and neck scraped across the broken. She dropped the remains to the muddy ground. She then performed the disgusting task of retrieving the key from the second man's ruined socket. His one good eye stared back accusingly. She wasted no time in turning over the ignition and gunned the engine. "No more stops," she muttered to herself. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Operation DarkStar has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.